She screamed before I even understood what had happened. I turned, and there she was. My little girl, her wheelchair half-angled on the curb, one hand gripping the armrest, the other tangled in the fingers of a woman twice her size. "Move your kid," the woman barked. "She's blocking my driveway." Time slowed. The world narrowed to the sound of my daughter's sobs and the violent tug of that woman's hand in her hair. The neighbors froze mid-step. A man watering his lawn stopped, hose still running. Nobody moved. I ran forward, every instinct screaming, but I stopped just short of grabbing the woman. My daughter's frightened eyes found mine, pleading, shaking. "Let her go," I said, voice low, controlled. "Right now." Karen, because she fit the word before I even knew her name, jerked her hand away like she was the victim. She was in the way. "You people need to learn respect. Respect." That word tasted like rust in my mouth. I knelt beside my daughter, smoothing her hair back gently, the red imprint of fingers already rising on her scalp. "You're okay," I whispered, but my voice was trembling for the first time in years. Karen huffed, straightened her sunglasses, and stormed off. She thought it ended there. She thought no one saw, but the cameras had, and soon, the entire neighborhood would. Before that day, our lives moved quietly, like the steady rhythm of a clock that never missed a beat. I'm Michael Harper, a mechanical engineer who believes in systems, patience, and order. My wife, Laura, is a school counselor, gentle, patient, the heart of our home. And then there's Emma, our miracle. She was born premature with nerve damage that left her legs weak, but she never once complained. Her wheelchair wasn't a symbol of limitation, it was freedom, painted sky blue with little yellow stars she stuck on herself. Every morning she'd roll out the door, waving to neighbors, her laughter soft and honest in a world too busy to notice kindness anymore. Our neighborhood, Willow Creek Estates, looked like the kind of place where bad things didn't happen. Symmetrical lawns, pastel mailboxes, smiling faces hiding sharper edges. The HOA prided itself on community excellence. They had rules for grass height, mailbox color, even curtain shades. But they had no rule for compassion. We lived 2 houses down from her, Karen Whitmore, a self-appointed enforcer of order, always armed with her clipboard and disapproval. She'd glare every time Emma's wheelchair ramp was lowered, as if inclusion itself offended her sense of symmetry. Still, we tried to keep peace. Laura baked cookies for HOA gatherings. I trimmed the lawn like a soldier in uniform. We smiled, nodded, stayed polite. Then came the afternoon that changed everything, when Emma's kindness met someone else's cruelty. She was simply waiting beside our car, sunlight in her hair, humming one of her favorite songs. She wasn't in anyone's way, but in Karen's world, empathy was a traffic violation, and by the end of that day, she'd discover what happens when decency stays silent just long enough for a camera to remember everything she forgot. It was a bright Saturday afternoon, the kind that smelled like cut grass and new beginnings. Emma had just come home from her physical therapy session. She always liked to sit near the driveway afterward, watching the clouds drift by while Laura unloaded groceries. I was fixing a loose gate hinge when I heard the sharp blast of a horn. Karen's white SUV was idling across the street, the engine purring like it owned the pavement. She leaned halfway out the window, sunglasses low, voice slicing through the calm. "Can you move her?" "She's blocking my driveway." Laura looked up, startled. "She's not blocking anything, Karen. She's on our property line." But Karen didn't care about lines, legal or moral. She threw the door open and marched toward Emma, heels clacking against the pavement like gavel strikes. "I've told you people before," she snapped. "This isn't a daycare zone." Emma's small voice trembled. "I'm not doing anything wrong." Karen grabbed the handle of her wheelchair and yanked it backward. Too hard. The sudden jolt sent Emma's body forward, hair falling into her face. When she tried to steady herself, Karen's hand shot out again, clutching a handful of her hair. "Don't you roll away when I'm talking to you," Laura screamed. I dropped my wrench and ran. For a split second, all I saw was Emma's terrified eyes and Karen's clenched jaw. I stopped inches away. My voice came out lower than I expected. Measured. Deliberate. "Let go of her. Now." Karen hesitated, then released her grip as if she'd suddenly realized how many eyes were watching. A curtain fluttered across the street. The man mowing his lawn stood frozen, mouth open. She tried to reclaim control. She was blocking the sidewalk. People could trip. "There's no one here," I said. "Except you." Her face twisted, red and indignant. "Don't you raise your voice at me. I'm on the HOA board. You'll regret this attitude," but I didn't answer. I knelt beside Emma, brushing her hair back gently. A red mark was already forming on her scalp. Laura wrapped her arms around her, crying softly. Karen stormed back to her car, muttering something about entitled parents. The SUV roared, tires screeching as she sped off. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was paralyzed. I looked at the neighbors peeking through blinds, at the camera fixed above my garage, its small red light blinking steadily. Karen thought she'd humiliated us in private, but she'd just performed for an audience that never forgets. That night, the house felt heavier than usual. Laura sat on the couch, holding Emma close, running her fingers through her daughter's hair where the red marks still showed. Emma's wheelchair sat by the window, untouched, as if it too had gone quiet. I stood by the kitchen sink staring at the glass of water in my hand. Every time I blinked, I saw the same image again. Karen's fingers knotted in Emma's hair, her face twisted with something worse than anger, entitlement. I didn't shout. I didn't break anything. I just felt something inside me go very, very still. Emma looked up at me once and whispered, "Did I do something wrong, Daddy?" I swallowed hard. "No, sweetheart. You did everything right. Someone else forgot how to be human." After she went to bed, I stepped outside. The street was silent, the air cool. From across the road, Karen's porch light glowed like nothing had happened. I looked up at my garage camera, its tiny red recording light flickering steady. That was when the calm came. Not the fragile kind that breaks under anger, but the sharp, deliberate kind that builds plans. I walked back inside, opened my laptop, and backed up the footage to a secure drive. "Every frame, every second," Laura asked softly from the hallway. "What are you doing?" I met her eyes and said, making sure our silence speaks louder than her screams. The next morning, I printed a still from the video, Karen's hand frozen mid-pull, and placed it in a folder titled Evidence Driveway Incident. They thought this family would just endure and forget. But I'd spent a lifetime designing systems that recorded everything. Now it was time to let one of them tell our story. By Monday morning, the neighborhood had already chosen sides. Quietly, of course, the way polite people do when they want to feel innocent. A few neighbors stopped waving. Others crossed the street when we walked by. Someone slid an anonymous note under our door that read, "Try not to make a scene next time. We all have driveways to protect." Laura folded it neatly, placed it in a drawer, and said nothing, but I could see the ache in her silence. The HOA meeting minutes were posted online that night. Right there, under Community Incidents, it said, "Resident at Lot 22 caused obstruction and verbal disturbance. Board member acted to ensure safety." Safety. That word again. Always twisted to fit cruelty. Emma stopped wanting to go outside. She'd sit by her window, hands on her wheels, staring out at the driveway that had become a crime scene in her mind. One afternoon, she asked, "Dad, if I stay inside, will people stop being mad?" That question hollowed me out. Meanwhile, Karen didn't hide. She strutted through the neighborhood with her clipboard, her smile smug. She told anyone who'd listen that she only touched the girl's hair to move her safely. But I had the footage, and I was patient. I started collecting everything. Every message in the HOA chat where she spun her version of the story. Every neighbor who'd quietly admitted, "We saw, but we didn't want to get involved." The more I listened, the more the arrogance revealed itself. She believed her authority protected her, so I began a quiet documentation process. I printed transcripts of the HOA bylaws, all 47 pages. Highlighted the clauses on property boundaries and personal safety. Annotated them with legal notes referencing ADA Title II and state disability protections. Grace looked at the stack of papers spreading across my desk and asked, "What's all this for?" I answered without looking up. They're building walls with lies. I'm just drawing the floor plan. By the end of that week, I had more than anger. I had structure, because people like Karen always underestimate quiet men. They think silence means surrender, but sometimes silence means someone is building an airtight case, one calm breath at a time. Karen thought she'd frightened us into silence. She had no idea who she was dealing with. By day, I'm an engineer. But before that, I spent 8 years as a municipal accessibility inspector, the kind who audits public buildings, ramps, and housing developments for ADA compliance. I'd written reports that shaped county policy. And now, I was staring at one of the clearest cases of public discrimination I'd ever seen. Right in front of my own driveway, I began with the basics: legal documentation. I downloaded the Homeowners Association Charter and cross-referenced it against state property codes. Their driveway access rule had no legal backing. In fact, HOA jurisdiction ended exactly 2 feet before my property line, the spot where Emma's wheelchair sat that afternoon. Next, I compiled the footage from my camera into a clear, time-stamped sequence. Clip 1, Karen's SUV approaching. Clip 2, her yelling. Clip 3, her hand gripping my daughter's hair. The audio captured Emma's cry, faint, but enough to freeze any heart that wasn't made of stone. I sent copies to 3 places. My attorney friend, Rachel Kim, a civil rights litigator, the State Office of Disability Affairs, which handles ADA grievances, a small local journalist I'd once helped with a story about accessibility fraud. Then I waited. 2 days later, Rachel called me. "Michael," she said, her tone calm but charged, "this isn't just a neighbor dispute. This is assault on a disabled minor combined with public harassment. You're sitting on a federal case." I exhaled slowly. "I don't want to destroy her," I said. "I want her to understand." Rachel replied, "Then let's show her the truth in front of everyone she hides behind." Meanwhile, word spread that the HOA planned a community mediation session, their way of pretending control. Perfect. That would be my stage. I spent the next few evenings preparing my presentation, not out of vengeance, but clarity, evidence, laws, witness statements. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to insult. I was going to teach, the way I used to when training city planners about disability ethics. Laura helped me choose the final slide, a still image of Emma smiling in her wheelchair, her hair slightly messy from that awful day. At the bottom, a single line: "Respect isn't optional. It's access." On the night before the meeting, I stood by the window watching the streetlights flicker against Karen's SUV. She was outside, chatting with 2 other board members, laughing as if nothing had ever happened. I whispered quietly to the glass, "Enjoy your peace tonight. Tomorrow, you'll finally learn what accountability sounds like." Because once the truth was on record, once the footage played before every neighbor she'd ever tried to impress, her power would dissolve, one frame at a time, and the same camera she ignored would become the voice my daughter never got to use that day. The following week, my desk looked more like a command center than a workspace. Folders labeled incident footage, witness accounts, and legal framework covered every inch of wood grain. The air in the room was quiet, deliberate, like the calm before a verdict. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about clarity, the kind that exposes truth without shouting. I mapped out my plan step by step. Step 1, corroboration. I reached out to 3 neighbors I trusted: the Johnsons, who had seen Karen shouting, and Mrs. Rivera, who had recorded part of the confrontation on her phone. Their statements aligned perfectly with my footage. Each wrote an affidavit, signed and dated. Step 2, legal structure. Rachel helped me finalize the complaint draft: assault on a disabled minor and harassment under ADA Section 12(1)32. She insisted we attach still frames from the footage. The evidence was so clear it needed no commentary. Step 3, exposure. The HOA had announced an emergency special meeting to address community behavior concerns. That was my opening. I requested speaking time, not to accuse, but to provide constructive clarity on disability interaction protocols. They accepted without hesitation. Step 4, The message. I prepared a calm, structured presentation, start with the definition of accessibility, then the footage, then the law, then the truth. Every word was chosen like a scalpel, not a sword. Laura helped me rehearse the tone. "You don't need to sound angry," she said. "Your calm will make her panic." I smiled faintly. I know. That's what truth does when it walks into a room full of noise. The night before the meeting, I placed the flash drive into a small wooden box, Emma's old jewelry case. On top of it, I laid one of her yellow hair ties, the same kind Karen had ripped loose that day. I whispered quietly to myself. Tomorrow, that tie becomes evidence. The following morning, a city mediator confirmed receipt of our official ADA complaint. The HOA board had 48 hours to respond to the investigation notice. They didn't know it yet, but the storm had already begun. As the sun set that evening, I stood outside our house looking toward Karen's porch. She was pruning her hedges like nothing had happened, humming loudly for attention. I didn't move, didn't speak. Because by this time tomorrow, every person she'd ever tried to intimidate would finally see her without the disguise of authority. I went back inside, powered off the lights, and let the quiet settle around me. There's a special kind of peace that comes before justice. The peace of knowing the truth no longer belongs to you alone. The community hall was fuller than I'd ever seen it. Folding chairs pressed wall to wall, the low hum of gossip filling the air. HOA meetings were usually dull affairs about lawn heights and mailbox paint. But tonight, everyone came to watch a storm. Karen stood near the front, dressed sharply, smiling as though she was the host of a charity gala. Her arms were folded, chin lifted. Behind her sat Mrs. Clark, the HOA president, eyes darting nervously between papers. I walked in carrying only my laptop and a calm expression. No folder, no lawyer, no anger, just purpose. Mrs. Clark cleared her throat. "Mr. Harper, you've requested 10 minutes to address the board regarding last week's incident." "Yes," I said evenly. "Thank you." I connected my laptop to the projector. The first slide appeared. A simple title, "Community Safety Through Respectful Conduct." Karen smirked. I could feel her confidence radiating until the second slide began to play. It was video. My driveway, her SUV pulling in, her voice loud and shrill, "Move your kid! She's blocking my driveway!" The room went still. Then the next moment, her hand jerking forward, grabbing Emma's hair. My daughter's scream echoed through the speakers, like something divine had decided to make the truth audible. Someone gasped aloud. Another person whispered, "Oh my God!" Karen lunged forward, voice shaking. "That's out of context. You're twisting this—" I held up a hand, calm as glass. "No edits. Straight feed. Time-stamped, authenticated. The footage ended with her storming off, and Emma crying in Laura's arms." I paused. Let the silence breathe. "This," I said quietly, "is what happens when authority forgets compassion." Karen turned red. You can't show that here without permission." "Actually," I replied, tapping the next slide, "under Section 3 of our HOA bylaws, any resident may present verified evidence of misconduct affecting community safety." "You signed that document yourself," a murmur rippled through the crowd. Then the next slide appeared. Ada Law 12-132, highlighted. "No qualified individual with a disability shall, by reason of such disability, be subjected to discrimination." I read it once, slowly, then turned toward her. "You didn't just break decency, Mrs. Whitmore, you broke federal law." Karen's breath caught. Her mask of confidence cracked like glass under sunlight. Mrs. Clark spoke next, voice trembling. "Mr. Harper, is it true a formal ADA complaint has been filed?" "Yes," I said. "As of this morning. The footage, the witness statements, and your board minutes are included." The whispers turned into a wave, neighbors who had once avoided us now glaring at Karen with disgust. I closed the laptop and took a small yellow hair tie from my pocket, placing it gently on the table. "My daughter wore this that day," I said softly. "You tore it from her hair when you grabbed her." "I kept it. not as proof of violence, but of how easily kindness can be ripped away. And then I turned to leave. The applause started small, hesitant, then grew, echoing off the walls. People stood. Some even shouted her name in anger. For the first time, Karen wasn't the one commanding attention. She was the one everyone saw for who she truly was, a woman undone by her own cruelty, exposed by the truth she thought she could silence. By the next morning, the video had already spread far beyond Willow Creek. Someone had recorded the HOA meeting and uploaded it online with the title, HOA Woman Assaults Disabled Child Gets Exposed by Her Own Neighbor. Within hours, it hit local news feeds. By afternoon, the footage was on every neighborhood forum, every Facebook group, every phone. The once proud HOA that boasted excellence and order had become the face of arrogance and cruelty. Karen's perfect world began to crumble. She tried to control the narrative, posting long rants about defamation and misunderstanding. But it was too late. The internet doesn't unsee. The camera didn't lie. At noon, a reporter showed up outside her house, microphone in hand. She slammed the door on him. By sunset, Channel 8 News ran the story, including a short interview with Laura, calm, composed, and devastatingly truthful. "My daughter didn't deserve fear for simply being seen," she said softly. "We forgive, but we don't forget." The clip spread faster than any outrage Karen could spin. 2 days later, the HOA board called another emergency session, this time with city officials and police observers present. I attended quietly, back row, just watching. Karen sat near the front, pale and smaller somehow, her sunglasses hiding red eyes. The HOA president read the findings aloud. After review of all evidence and witness accounts, the board acknowledges a serious violation of community policy, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and moral conduct expectations. She turned to Karen. "Effective immediately, Mrs. Whitmore, you are removed from the HOA board of directors." A heavy silence filled the room. Karen's lips trembled. "You can't just erase me from the community I built." Mrs. Clark didn't look up. "You erased yourself the moment you put your hands on that child." I could have felt satisfaction in that moment, but what I felt was something quieter. Relief. After the meeting, several neighbors approached us. One by one, they apologized for their silence. Mrs. Rivera hugged Laura and said, "Your daughter is braver than all of us." Emma's story reached the county disability office, and a week later they contacted me to help them design an outreach campaign for community education. They wanted me to write the slogan. I sent them 7 words that summed up everything this fight had taught me. Respect isn't optional. It's access for all. That slogan now hangs at every HOA gate in Willow Creek. Karen's house went dark soon after. Curtains drawn, car gone. Rumor said she sold the place quietly, leaving before the next board vote. The neighborhood changed too. Softer somehow. People smiled more, helped more. Even the HOA's tone shifted from control to care. The same people who once ignored us now looked out for Emma every day. The world had seen the worst of someone, but in doing so, it found a better version of itself. Weeks passed, and the echo of that night began to fade. Not in memory, but in noise. The outrage online quieted. The headlines moved on. But inside Willow Creek, something had shifted permanently. Our neighborhood no longer looked like a postcard of perfection. It looked real. The first change came quietly. The HOA installed new signage. Accessibility zone, reserved for wheelchair access. Beneath it, in small letters, my slogan, respect isn't optional. Neighbors volunteered to repaint the curbs and expand the sidewalks near the driveways. Even the most rigid rule followers began to smile more often when they saw Emma outside. Kids from 2 streets over would come to push her wheelchair as she laughed, hands in the wind, her hair dancing, free again. I noticed the small details. The woman who once complained about noise now waved every morning. The same man who froze during the attack showed up one day with flowers, eyes wet. Tell your girl she's stronger than this whole street, he said quietly. As for Karen, her house sold faster than anyone expected. The new owners removed the manicured hedges she'd obsessed over and replaced them with wildflowers. Every time I passed, I couldn't help but smile. Because in some strange way, nature had finished the lesson. Control fades, but kindness grows back stronger. A month later, the community held its first Inclusion Day. Emma was asked to cut the ribbon. She held the scissors steady, smiling proudly as the crowd clapped. When she looked up at me, I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen since before that day. Peace. During her little speech, her voice wavered just slightly. I hope no one ever feels scared for being in someone's way, she said. Because sometimes we're not in the way. We're just on our way. The audience went silent, then rose in applause. That night, as the lights dimmed and the street fell quiet, I stood by our driveway, the same spot where pain had begun. The moonlight reflected off the small metal frame of her wheelchair, the same shine that once drew cruelty. Now that shine meant something else. Not weakness, not difference. Proof that dignity, once defended, doesn't dim, it glows. And for the first time in months, I whispered into the calm night, we didn't just win. Emma, we changed the world on our street. Peace has a sound, not silence, but steadiness. That's what our house feels like now. The same driveway where cruelty once lived now echoes with laughter and the soft whir of Emma's wheels on smooth pavement. Some nights, I still replay the footage, not out of anger, but gratitude. It reminds me of how close we came to letting fear win, and how a single moment of calm courage changed everything. Laura often tells me she's proud I stayed composed, that I didn't let rage take over. But I remind her, it wasn't strength, it was clarity. Rage burns fast. Truth lasts longer. Emma brushes her hair herself these days. The strands are healthy again, the scalp healed. Sometimes she catches me watching and giggles. Dad, don't worry, it doesn't hurt anymore. And I smile because I know she means more than her hair. Willow Creek isn't perfect. It probably never was, but now it listens. It apologizes, it learns, and that's all I ever wanted. Not punishment, but awareness. Every flash of Emma's smile, every wave from a neighbor, every child who now runs beside her wheelchair, all of it tells me we didn't just survive the cruelty. We rewrote the story. Justice didn't come from a courtroom or a gavel. It came from the quiet power of proof and the courage to show it. And in that quiet, our home finally sounds like home again. If someone hurt your child and called it just a misunderstanding, would you walk away or make the truth impossible to ignore? Sometimes justice doesn't shout. It unfolds quietly, one calm act at a time. A single camera, a single truth. A single father who refused to let cruelty define his daughter's world. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And remember, silence may protect the cruel for a moment, but truth protects the innocent forever. Subscribe for more true stories of calm justice and quiet power.